As I approached retirement, I decided to get back into woodworking. My wife and I decided to stay in California. I signed up with several realtors to send listings of single-story homes on about an acre of land near San Diego. One morning, one came up that looked very promising. It had been repossessed by the bank. The next day, we met a realtor at the house and made an offer. As can be seen in the photos, the place, especially the property, was in rough shape. The house was in good condition. A space had already been graded for a large garage. After quite a bit of research on the construction of garages, we contracted with Tuff Shed to build us what we wanted. They drew up the plans, which we approved. The plans were submitted to the county for approval. They claimed that something wasn't up to code. Tuff Shed had to make the necessary changes and plans were resubmitted. Finally, after over a month delay, the building permit was approved. During the delay of the construction, one of our girls had a litter of puppies that I had to help with. We hired a contractor to do the foundation and the slab because Tuff Shed doesn't do that part of construction. Our contractor dug the foundation and prepared everything for concrete. Early one morning, a crew arrived, followed by a concrete truck. The crew poured concrete in all of the foundation forms first. They paid special attention where the pipes and electrical conduit came up through the foundation. With the foundation poured, the crew concentrated on making the slab. When the first truck was empty, we had to wait a while because the driver of the second truck got lost. As the crew poured the rest of the slab, the section that had already been poured was smoothed out. The slab on the garage side was sloped, so a foundation was created for the walls. While that was happening, the slab for the shop side was poured. Suddenly, the truck was empty and the rush was on to smooth out the slab. That evening, I got the chance to spend some time with Joy and her puppies. The slab was left to cure for several weeks. I could now see how large my new shop garage was going to be. As the slab cured, Joy's puppies continued to grow. Early one morning, the trucks arrived with the trusses and the walls. We were ready to go. I was excited to watch the crew take the first section off the truck and set it in place. It was quickly followed by the second section, which had the cutouts for the windows in my shop. The end was finished and they started on the back. The back was soon finished. It was quickly followed by the other end wall. With the first three walls in place, the crew unloaded the trusses and placed them inside the building. Once the trusses were unloaded and in place, they started on the front wall. Soon it was time for the last section to be put in place. The next step was putting on the end caps for the trusses. Next up was the header for the garage door, followed very quickly by the trusses. Day one ended with all the trusses in place. That night I got to spend time with Joy's puppies. I arrived early the next morning to what was a beautiful sight for me. When the Tuff Shed crew showed up, they started working on the roof. It wasn't long before it was finished and they were ready to move on to other things. When the cutout was made for the back door, I could see how long my commute was going to be. Earthquake tie-down straps were added to connect the trusses and the walls. I finally had a building with the walls and roof. It looked fantastic. The crew now moved on to installing the windows. We suddenly realized that there was a problem between the size of the openings and the size of the windows. Fortunately, the openings were too large, so it was an easy fix with extra blocking inside and extra strips of siding outside. With the problem solved, the windows were installed. Before the crew left for the day, they installed the entry doors. While we waited for the framing inspection, the puppies grew quite a bit. With that inspection passed, the electrical and plumbing were roughed in. Construction was halted a while for another inspection. Once that inspection was passed, the shingles were installed by the Tuff Shed crew. The project manager also sent out a crew to touch up the paint. They also installed the trim. The Tuff Shed part of the construction was finally done. My contractor stepped in and finished the electrical and started adding insulation. Insulation was added to the walls and the ceiling. As soon as all the electrical was finished, they started adding drywall. We decided to go ahead and add insulation and drywall at this time so that we could use plastic pipe instead of copper for the fire sprinkler system. While the drywall was being completed, I had to go back home. I took the puppies with me. By the time I got back to the job site, the drywall was up and taped. We had decided not to use a professional drywall crew because of the cost, so it was a little rough. But it was fine for a workshop garage space. My electrician installed the outside lights. Next, he started installing the lights for the workshop. He installed 16 4-foot T8 fixtures, which totals 32 tubes. To save some money, I decided to paint the interior of the building. While I was painting, a crew finished up some of the concrete work outside. The space between the existing driveway and the building was filled in. They inset some flagstone into the concrete for decoration. The crew also filled in the space between the steps from the house to the building. A section of concrete also had to be added to the driveway so it would match up with the garage door. The contractor misjudged the amount of concrete necessary, so they had to finish up with a small mixer and some bags of concrete. In April of 2009, our contractor was finished with the project. A few weeks later, the garage door was finally installed. With the building secure, Pam and I decided to paint the floor with epoxy paint. This was the final step before we could start moving equipment into the building. I added a walkway out front using the flagstone that they used next to the building, and added some landscaping along the other side of the driveway. Finally, my dream workshop garage was finished. When a column was added next to the building and an entry gate was installed.